cabins on that side of the road had like animal names. The ones over here had mountain names like Bell and Haskell, that kind of stuff. That's all gone. That got caught in the squeeze of water quality control with everything was cesspools back then. And the girl that was staying here at the time thought we cut her water off and it had just frozen because they were trying to stay here in the winter time. And she turned this into water quality control, and the next thing we know, they condemned all the cabins. Except for the 3 across the street, my brother's cabin up on the hill there. That actually has a leach field. But, you know, that's the rise and fall there. Yeah, the people would come and stay here. It was $10. Sorry for the $10 or $12 a night for the small cabins. And the big ones were like $25 a night. My brother and I would sit out on the front deck with George Zimri out here, and they had a Coke machine. It was 10 cents a bottle for a glass bottle of Coke. It would be 5 cents when you turn it back in. I remember that distinctly because we'd sit there and drink that machine dry. And just sit and watch. George would come out. Somebody had carved him he's a big Boston cop, I guess. And in the Navy, he learned to cook. And he could cook for 500 people better than he could cook for 5 people. And he would do all the fires over here. When the intensity of fires in this area got bad, they would hire people to serve all the firefighters, and he would invariably get the job. It was amazing to watch him turn stuff out here. And he would cook 20-pound turkey, 20-pound ham, and roast beef and fried chicken every night of the week. Here, it was like started out at $2.75 per plate. And, I think when he passed, it was up to like.
It's not taken. Thank you.
Still an incredible party. Came from a long ways off just to eat. And I remember his salads were always the same. He had lots of different kinds of salads out there. And they used whiting to keep the salad green, fresh. Whiting is just a little miles for it. Keeping everything fresh or green. They were hunting out of season, and they hung a deer in the back of the hotel while it's I guess they're aging. They had that was my first contact with those guys. They were different. They were all single guys. They all ended up doing different things. I think I don't know if Tim's still alive or not.
Tim died.
Tim died. When did he move up? 74. So yeah, right around then. Alan's been a principal here for a long time. He got to stay, and when we had cabins when the creek ran here, and he lived in cabin 18. Pauline stayed here. 16? Cabin 16?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the creek actually ran here. And in, let's see, 64, 71, 81, 86, all those were different winters, massive winters. 71, it was 35 below zero. And I came home from college and parked my truck, and it didn't. They had cesspools. Cesspools, a 50-gallon drum with a little sand around it. So, when you filled it up, it was a problem. They're all right along the creek. I don't understand what they're. Let's see what else. The Feather River Inn. It's going through changes, and it was a prep school at one time. And the kids would come across. They would sneak across the river, and when the bar closed, I remember one night they broke into the bar. They stole a keg, stole a bunch of liquor, and they got caught floating the keg back across the river. And so they were brought to here, and I was supposed to inflict some kind of punishment on the poor children, and it was disgusting. They were rich, spoiled, and had an attitude, and so I made them. I wanted them to rake around Mohawk and clean up around here and do all that kind of stuff. They lasted a day, and then I got a note from the I can't remember his name.
Bill Hoffman.
Who?
Bill Hoffman.
Hoffman, yes, Bill. That's right. Bill Hoffman. I was being too harsh, and they cut their punishment short. And then it's gone through a series of owners, and I don't know what it's doing over there. It's sad that it's dead, because that was the finest building in this part of the valley. This old hotel. They had 102 rooms, big dance floor, big kitchen. What they call the den, the bar they had. The Tigers Den. That's right. UOP owned part of it for a long time. They used it as a summer camp. They still have everybody's attention.
You bet.
I don't know. There's not a whole lot. I mean, that brings me up to about 1984, and I can talk about all the winters I've experienced here. But that's boring as hell. The Feather River Inn is going through changes, and it was a prep school at one time, and the kids would come across. They would sneak across the river, and when the bar closed, I remember one night they broke into the bar. They stole a keg, stole a bunch of liquor, and they got caught floating the keg back across the river. And so they were brought to, I don't know where my parents worked, but they were brought over here, and I was supposed to inflict some kind of punishment on the poor children, and it was disgusting. They were rich, spoiled, and had an attitude, and so I made them. I wanted them to rake around Mohawk and clean up around here and do all that kind of stuff. They lasted a day, and then I got a note from the I can't remember his name.
Bill Hoffman.
Who?
Bill Hoffman.
Hoffman, yes, Bill. That's right. Bill Hoffman. I was being too harsh, and they cut their punishment short. And then it's gone through a series of owners, and I don't know what it's doing over there. It's sad that it's dead, because that was the finest building in this part of the valley. This old hotel. They had 102 rooms, big dance floor, big kitchen. What they call the den, the bar they had. The Tigers Den. That's right. UOP owned part of it for a long time. They used it as a summer camp. They still have everybody's attention.
You bet.
Thank God.
But my main question is, the gentleman that's lounging in that picture over the bar, is that
That's my
George
dad.
Shaw?
No, that's my dad.
Okay.
Oh.
Did he? Okay, so
George Shaw was our manager at one time, and he lived in that cabin over there.
okay, George Shaw was the
And
manager,
he was manager at the Feather River Park also.
right?
And
And it was my understanding from my uncle that George came over here and developed this. So no, he didn't. He just came over to manage.
yeah.
Okay.
And that, George had a very scheduled routine, and my father wasn't much into routines. So, it was when he ran the desk, and he made sure people got in the cabins were clean, and all that kind of stuff. And maybe it was just a little too regimented for my father. I don't know. They didn't see eye to eye after a while.
Okay.
Yeah, I knew Jack and Lonnie when they had their condo over there in Lewis Pines. I
Oh,
took care
sure.
of that.
Yep.
I got in a lot of arguments with Jack about
Who didn't?
the care and
Yeah,
his place.
big character.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He was quite a guy. He chased me down a couple times.
No doubt.
I was family.
So Shaw Corporation that owns that also owns the Tacoma.
Right.
And so most of their money, I think they pooled into
They built that hotel, right?
their property, they built the hotel, but they're funneling their money into Tacoma instead of Feather River Inn, the way I understand it.
Yeah, well, they got caught, when they failed with those homes over there, they got caught, they got, I don't know, you call it red tagged or condemned or whatever, but they couldn't go forward until they followed all the criteria, all the prerequisites to make that kind of development happen, because there's supposed to be 2 or 3 story condominiums in the back, behind at least that's what I heard.
Do some big fines and gold strikes out there. The brothers kind of sold out their tent interest in gambling and liquor and went to go check out the new claim. James Davis Byers, who'd been up through there and saw the Feather River country, but then actually ended up down here in Jameson City, where he opened the first of, he'd actually owned several over the course of a lifetime, butcher shops. He was a butcher, and his brother, who also went by initials in Davis, he was also a hotel keeper and saloon keeper. So while his brother cut meat, he kept the hotel and saloon, and they cleaned up for about 2 years or so out in Jameson City, right there at the foot of the hill. About 1854, when Quincy itself started to really take root and Elizabethtown started to fade out there, and the county seat of Plymouth started to get carved out from Sierra County, the brothers moved over to what would become Quincy, established another hotel, hotel, saloon, and James Davis Byers operated a butcher shop. But this time, James Davis Byers, having been a constable before, he signed on as a deputy under the first sheriff of Plymouth County, George Washington Sharp. He took the office in 1854. Now, G.W. Sharp is interesting only for the fact that he absconded from office well into his first year for embezzling the tax money and foreign miners' taxes. When people started to realize there was a shortfall, he took off and left his wife and 3 children, never returned to Quincy. His 2 deputies took over. There was a quick election. Somebody held the position internally, but James Davis Byers was a man about town. Everybody knew him, loved him, businessman, respected figure. He ended up becoming the first, in a sense, real sheriff of Plymouth County. The other deputy, a man named E.W. Pierce, he was stayed on as Davis's deputy and actually ended up marrying Sharp's wife, who he abandoned, and kind of kept with her the rest of his life. Now these guys, interesting story enough on that alone. However, in about 1860 or so, up in Lassen, what's now Susanville, the area was so far removed from this area here that folks thought, well, why am I paying taxes to a county that doesn't offer me services, any legal protections? My courthouses are a 2-day, ride from here. So folks there under Isaac Group, who's become the namesake of some of the area, they kind of have their own rebellion where they decide, no, we're going to form our own county and actually our own territory, the Nautaqua territory. We're not going to pay taxes or give in to the Plymouth County because they're not representing us or our interests. And at that time, there was so much going on in Plymouth County, they just kind of let it roll with it. Like, we got enough to handle in town, we'll let the people the far north have it. What ends up happening after J.D. Byers leaves office, he ends up moving up that way himself just to establish a ranch. And E.W. Pierce, who'd been his deputy, takes over as sheriff. Well, then there's a full armed rebellion in what will become Susanville, where they refuse to pay taxes, refuse to serve warrants, and anything that the Plymouth County Courthouse says. They install their own elected officials. Well, this won't sit in Plymouth County. So they get James Davis Byers, who sold out his interest around here by now. He rides up with his old deputy, and they're going to arrest the judge and the sheriff of that new county, this rebellious county, and take him back to Plymouth to, face the consequences. And again, people being so civil, they ride in, they get both the guys. Well, they're all brother Masons, so they can't arrest a brother Mason. They're all part of the same order. So for some reason they ride out, and then I guess shortly after the judge says that won't cut it, they send it back out to go take him in anyways. Well, the folks of the Nautaqua territory, Isaac Group, they got the better of them. They actually captured James Davis Byers and threw him in their jail. Basically issued the challenge to folks in Plymouth County: if you want your sheriff back, you come and get him. Starting what goes to sagebrush in Susanville, 2 armed forces kind of built themselves up. One coming from Plymouth County and all the outlying camps. Some say they actually managed to get themselves, this is 1863, so this is the height of everything going on in the Civil War. They actually managed to get themselves a cannon and lug it over the mountain, some folks say. But they had a standoff in what was then just a dusty little town in Susanville. There's just Brooks Trading Post and a couple of hotels and a main street. But they're holding the sheriff there. He's able to walk the grounds of basically town, but not any further than that. Well, the 2 sides basically took battle in the main street of Susanville that day with the Plymouth regulators and the Nautaqua territory. purposely not trying to hit anybody, mind you, just trading gunfire and having a good old day-long gunfight. 2 people were hit by accident, and both sides are very respectful, let people get clear and get some medical care. And in proof that, you know, hey, this is a neighborly dispute, that night they took a break for dinner. Both sides put down their rifles, met in the street, and walked to the eating house up the way. They explained to the town what had been going on that day, how they'd been plunking away at each other from a barn and a hotel right there on Main Street. And at the end of the night, the sheriff of the actual county and the sheriff of the new Nataka territory got together and realized, can't have everybody go back to this tomorrow. We probably can't even talk it into it. So at that night, they decided, how about we give it a truce and we give it over to the governor. The governor's probably figure out where this territory lies. And the governor said, I'm not dealing with that. He gave it to his secretary man by the name of Ryan Clemens, who might not be well known. Oh, I'm sorry, the governor of Nevada at that time, so they're claiming the territorial dispute was on the border. This man Ryan Clemens, you don't really know him that much, but you know his brother Samuel Clemens, Mark Twain. So it was up to Mark Twain's brother actually decided to parallel where the borderline of northeastern California sits. It took them about a year to figure out it did not sit in Nevada. It actually sat on California. Isaac Root, who named the town, tried to build himself a territory out of it. He did not get his town or his territory. He did get a county in Nevada named after him, though, after he passed away. Everybody kind of involved in it. On Isaac Root's side, he passed away shortly after, not really ever seeing the big empire in Northern California he wanted. E.W. Pierce, who was the deputy of Mr. Davis who came to his rescue, he actually lived a long life and retired from Columbus about 5-10 years later, went down to Santa Barbara and opened a bunch of orange groves. Got very invested in that, made a lot of money. However, I love to hear the story from start to finish of people. And when you can't find, with old-timey newspapers and old-timey accounts, you don't always get that resolution. With Pierce, I really wanted to find it out. He seemed like an interesting guy, always played second fiddle, not necessarily a ball of fire, but he was there for a lot. He owned those orange groves in Santa Barbara. Way later in life, in the 1890s or so, I was finally able to find his obituary. I guess he had a reversal of fortune, lost all of his orange groves, and was being committed to a sanitarium for, for being insane. In order to not be taken in for that, he actually took out a vial, took out an apple he'd been eating, and sprinkled cyanide all over an apple he'd been eating, took a big bite, and fell out of his chair dead right there before they could drag him away to the sanitarium. And that's the second sheriff of Columbus County, or third in County County. But James Davis Byers went on to actually become the first sheriff of Susanville, and the government actually offered him the option to name the county, which would become Lassen County after Peter Lassen, Byers County, and him being very modest, rejected it. He ended up having holdings in Greenville, another butcher shop, as well as ranches, and all through California. He was one of the not all of California, but that northeastern part of California, one of the larger landowners, and actually worked with the California Idaho freight companies, and did a lot with the government and the military, kind of securing the area, but not necessarily as a leading man, but behind the scenes. He uses power, influence, community standing to kind of build the communities out there in that pocket of Beaver, Alturas, Susanville, all out around that pocket there. Even served briefly as an assemblyman for the area, owning large ranch, several big ranches, big show horses, and several butcher shops throughout his life. He passed away in the early 1900s. And folks, I mean, we've had kind of a full evening of stories with that. With that, I won't bore you much too longer. Let y'all enjoy and share a few more stories between yourselves. I just want to thank the.
I think Katie is going to take a few minutes.
We're going to take more than 3 minutes.
Thanks, Jason.
What really kind of got me planning these tavern talks, I'm on the board of the Historical Society in Cupertino, down in the Bay Area where I'm at. We have one tavern of any real length. It's an 80-year-old roadhouse named Paulonetti's. Everything else is a gentrified something built in the last 5 years. So we really wanted to do a big get-together because from my dad's side of the family, we have a lot of stories at that particular tavern. So kind of like this, I want to get together with people who might have been in the know or known some of the people or some of the history and have a few drinks, tell a few stories where people are having a good time. It's not just necessarily a whole built-up presentation. It's neighbors, friends, people with shared history and shared community, kind of getting to revel in that for a night and share it and have the nostalgia. This is actually my 9th tavern talk I've done. I think it's the 3rd one I've done outside of my own historical society. We've hosted authors and community members, folks with deep historical ties. We've done bars, wineries. We're at a little hostess that has a bar and willing to take us in for a couple hour talks and share a few stories. And as always, all the proceeds go to our local historical society that is the host. Help them continue the good work they do and keep preserving the history of Johnsville and the locales that we all love and the stories that we all like to sit back and share.